I really thought I was going to have to take someone's life. We were at a mall. She moves, and I see 3 or 4 guys move with her. She moves again, and then I see them move again. And then I need to know if this is really happening. So we walk into this store, and then I hear, there she is. I thought, oh, crap. Because I knew this was real. Then I saw them walk in, and they were headed towards her. So I went around, and I got hold of her, and I said, honey, we're leaving. And then these guys stood right in front of us. And I knew this guy was kind of the leader, if you will. And I looked at him. I said, today you will die. And I don't care. I know how to kill you, and your friends are going to think about it. And if I go to prison, I don't care. Because this is my family. When I stared at him, he looked at me. He knew that I meant it.
What happened from there after?
I was committed. I was committed 100% to the action I was going to take. Yeah.
Okay. So, Mr. Red, thank you so much just for being here. I'm particularly excited about this just because I love martial arts. I love fighting. I kind of grew up just from my dad, learning how to box. I remember he actually took me out in the backyard right here, and he's like, all right, Miles, it's time to teach you how to fight. I think I was like in 8th grade or like a freshman in high school. And he taught me how to punch, but he didn't teach me how to block. So he would continue to like punch me like right in the nose. And my nose would just be like bleeding and like blood would be dripping all around the floor. And I remember my mom, because I was a kid and I was just like, I'm fine. But my mom came out with water and she's like, oh, do you guys want any water? She looked at the situation. My dad, because he was punching me on my nose, blood got on his glove. And then as he continued punching the rest of my body, I was just drenched in my own blood. And then because like your nose just runs everything, it was everywhere. Yeah. And so my mom was like, what are you doing to my son?
What is wrong with you?
Right? Yeah. But it was the way that me and my dad bonded. Like sometimes when he'd wake me up in the morning, just growing up, he'd like lie down next to me and then he'd put his arm out and then he'd start like choking me. Like he would like bring in the rear naked choke and then he'd start getting his hooks. I'm like, Dad, I'm just trying to sleep. So to begin our interview, I just kind of wanted to ask, like, what kind of martial arts have you trained in? Because I know there's quite a few.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say what your dad was doing sounds very familiar in my life. Any guy practices cat, dog, children, wife, they might not know it, but you're slipping something in there, right? So, So I've been training since 1988, started in Taekwondo, like a lot of people start there. And I'm a firm believer that you can take, as Sifu Bruce Lee said, take what you like, what's useful to you, and then move on, right? And I like what my other friend says. He goes, chew the meat and spit out the bones. Yeah. So for Taekwondo, I like the spinning kick, the front kick, the side kick. To me, those are just really fantastic kicks to have in your repertoire. Yeah. So then took some after that. I found Jukundo and Kali and Silat, and I was there for about Jukundo. That's the concept that Sifu Bruce Lee developed, and so it's a concept, and if you will, it's the first mixed martial arts, if you will, because he applied Western boxing, French savate, silat, kung fu, several martial arts. And he said, this is what I need for this time of fighting, right? So he just picked and chose and developed his system from there. And so I was there for about 12 years, and then I moved into Aikido for a very short period of time, and nothing against the Aikido guys, but it just wasn't what I was looking for. Right. What was really cool about going from Taekwondo to Jukundo was that I was going to test for my black belt in Taekwondo, but I felt I'm missing something. Maybe I need to do more katas, something. There's something missing. So a friend of mine found this flyer and Shifu Blaze Lung was the guy. So he invited us to his garage, and I thought, well, it's a garage for crying out loud. So we got out of the car, and I hear the bam, 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 and man, something's happening in this garage. And I go in there, and these guys are just pounding the pads and really getting into it. And I thought, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
I'm looking for a combative art, not a sport art.
Yeah,
and so when you get Jukun Do, you also get Kali and Silat, because Sifu Dan Inosanto was Bruce Lee's training partner. So Sifu Dan is Filipino, and his culture is the blunt weapon, the bladed weapon, right? So you get both those. And so combining those two is really, to me, tremendous, because you get the art of the empty hand, but also how to develop your weapon system. And then in that, you learn how the body moves. It's called sticky hand, right? You connect and you feel how everything flows and what's happening. So I think it's super valuable. And then from there, took a little Aikido, but it wasn't what I was looking for.
It's all throws for Aikido.
All throws, but I found it a little choreographed.
It felt a little.
Sorry, Aikido guys, but I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
And so then from there, I trained with a guy named Tim Larkin. And if you know anything about Tim Larkin, former Navy guy, he helped develop some of the self-defense tactics for a lot of the military in the Navy aspect of it. But he does a 3-day seminar where it's a lot of body weight, right? So if I were to hit you with my arm, my elbow, forearm, right? Okay, I'll hit you and I'll hurt you. But if I impact it with all my weight, then that's a whole different story. It's just a lot of power behind that. So that was his concept, right? Quick and easy. Really liked his system. Was there, trained with him for a short period of time, but a very effective period of time. And then moved into jiu-jitsu after that. And so currently I'm a brown belt. I might stay a brown belt because I hurt my knee. Oh. And so I went to the doctors. They said, you had arthritis. And I said, well, can I jiu-jitsu? They said, well, you might think about moving on.
No.
So in the world of jiu-jitsu, that means rest for 3 weeks. Go back, right? So So I'll let that rest and then I'll get back on there. So
wow.
Yeah.
So Jukun Do, that one is, you said Bruce Lee's
concept and philosophy of fighting.
Okay, so I always, because I'm not really familiar with Bruce Lee. Okay. When I think of Bruce Lee, I just think of karate,
Yeah, that's what everything's
but
right?
And when it comes to martial arts in the United States, I'm only really familiar because I've trained in jiu-jitsu. That was kind of my main one.
Okay.
And then in our, at the dojo that I was in, the studio, they kind of paired it with Muay Thai and judo. So they always taught us judo throws, and they always taught us, not always, but we could attend the Muay Thai classes.
Got it. Yeah.
And then from there, Dad started training me in boxing, and I went to boxing. So those are kind of the main ones. And then I also did wrestling. Okay. So those are the ones that I'm familiar with. And I feel like jiu-jitsu is starting to get a lot more popular. There's just a lot more jiu-jitsu studios.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it seems more ingrained into our culture, especially with UFC kind of being really popular now. But I've never really heard of Jukun Do. How important do you think Jukun Do is in terms of your, I guess, can you help explain it a little bit more?
Absolutely. So in the world of martial arts, or in the world of self-defense, or in the world of fighting, you have to understand there's stand-up and there's ground, right? Yes. And I don't think you can only select one.
Yes.
Right? I think you have to be like a diamond, multifaceted. And so Jukun Do, what I liked about it was the many facets, right? We had Muay Thai. And it really opened up your eyes to what's out there, right? Okay, so, and by that I mean, I remember training one guy, he could only kick this high, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we worked out. We made him very proficient at attacking at this height, right? And that was Bruce's philosophy. Sifu Bruce said, if this is what you have, then this is what you'll train with, right? He said, I can kick to here. Maybe some people can't, but I'll show you how to kick to here very effectively. Right, so it has, again, it's so multifaceted, but it covered a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of great stand-up. And I'm not sure if I answered your question, if I went sideways on that. But
No, you're fine. We're kind of unpackaging Jukundo
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
don't know anything about it.
And
So
it really is it's a philosophy. When you see jukun-do, it's not a style, it's a philosophy of fighting. And that's so people can mistake it as an actual fighting system, but it's not. Jukun-do is really a philosophy, and that is select what you need when you need it, but train in different aspects of martial arts so that you can. Right? What's that they say? I'd rather fight you from here, and then I'd rather fight you from here, and then I'd rather fight you from here, and then I'd rather fight you from here, then rather fight you, rather fight you from here, then I'll fight you from here, right? And that's kind of the philosophy, right?
So you trained in Jukundo for 12 years?
12 years, yeah.
Okay, so
and still keep it up. I still do Kali and Silat, and so, yeah. But
what are those, by the way, for our
Kali,
listeners who don't know?
So Kali and Silat. Kali goes under Eskrima, Arnis, or Kali. It depends on what region you are in the Philippines. But basically, it's stick fighting, if you will. It's using a blunt instrument to shatter bone. That's what that is. And then, but it's first taught on a bladed system because the striking pattern is the same. Whether it's this glass, this microphone, my blade, my pencil, my pen, my book, the striking pattern is always the same. So that is Kali. And once you learn Kali, it's such a fantastic system because it puts into your system how to move, right? Because if I thrust my hand at you, okay, it's not a big deal. You'll back up a little bit. But if I take a blade and do the same thing, you're going to move totally differently, right? And that's what Kali teaches you, right? Timing, rhythm, movement, footwork. And then Silat is if you take that away and start using your empty hands. The reason I like this is we had Grandmaster Leo Haron come and teach for a while at the academy I was at. And Grandmaster Haron, he fought the Japanese in the Philippines. And all he had was young men, right? Because all the older men and the fighting men had gone into war. So he had to defend his village. So he'd take these young men, right? And you have to learn how to fight in the morning because by tomorrow afternoon, you're going to be in battle. So this was a very quick system.
Yeah, quick basics.
Quick basics, right? Yeah. If there's one of the patterns is a 1 and a 2, right? And you can learn all sorts of things, but in a fight, you'll use a 1 and a 2, and you better be effective at it. Right?
Yeah,
you have to
really
be
good at it.
Especially if your life depends on it, right?
So what were the name of those two again?
So Kali, but it goes under Eskrima or Arnis. Again, it just depends on where your location is.
It sounds like you can use almost anything as a weapon.
Oh, absolutely,
if that's the case.
Absolutely. That's the whole concept. And again, it goes back to Sifu Bruce, right? Empty hand or something in your hand. Here's the concept, right? But you can't. Again, because the striking patterns are always the same no matter what you use.
So with the first one is called one more time.
Sure, Kali.
Okay, so
it goes
Kali,
by Kali. Yeah.
So could you essentially use anything then as
Absolutely,
a weapon?
Absolutely. You pick it and you use the same striking pattern.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
And then the second one is
Silat, and that's
Silat.
Empty hand. So that's a lot of close quarter. That's a lot of elbows, headbutts, knees, whatever you have that's empty hand, right? But there's arm drags, there's throws, and it's basically a fighting system that's empty hand as opposed to a weapon in your hand.
Okay, so then when it goes back to Jukundo that uses both of these kind of concepts, it is both a philosophy and a style.
So Jikundo is the philosophy, and then but it encompasses so much. So when people say I take JKD, it's referred to JKD. You pretty much have the understanding that you're going to learn a multi-faceted martial art, right? Yeah, and you might excel in one and not the other, but you're exposed to so many that there's something in there that you'll be able to find. So Jikundo is a philosophy, and if you really had to boil it down and call it, give it a name, you could call it I don't know. I've heard it called several things, and it's hard to nail it down because it isn't one thing. It isn't one thing. That's why it's referred to as JKD, because it's so encompassing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to Taekwondo, you said that's kind of where you began.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't want to be disrespectful, but when I one of the things that I love about jujitsu is that like you can't get your blue belt until you're 16.
Right.
Because if you have your blue belt,
Uh-huh.
for the most part, you can take out a lot of white belts.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that, like, as you get better and as you get your purple and your brown and your black, I just felt like when you're rolling with a black belt, it doesn't matter how much bigger you are, how much buffer you are, like black belts will dismantle you.
They just know.
Exactly. They're very proficient, you know, regardless. So if there's like a little girl, because I remember there was one time that I was going against this blue belt and, you know, she was a girl and I was a high school guy. And I was just like, whatever, you're a girl. And then she just started like cinching up. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And she started cinching up again. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I'm just like, I'm like dying. I'm like, oh my goodness.
What just happened?
It was cool. And so like when I see like a lot of like little kids who have like black belts in Taekwondo, I'm kind of thinking like, it's different than a black belt in jujitsu.
Absolutely.
And so what are your thoughts on Taekwondo? Because here's the thing though. I have gone to Japan many times. I'm getting there like, and I understand that now when I go to Japan, martial arts is more of like, it's not about taking the guy down. It's kind of about grace. It's about being able to control your body, your breathing, being able to do all these things like the katas you were able to, you were saying, you know, and like, it's also about culture, you know, and there's also a beauty behind it. So I think there's a lot more to martial arts than just like, I'm going to choke you out and I'm going to knock you out and everything. So is Taekwondo then more of a, like an elegant art? Or do you think that there's like a lot of like self-defense that can also be used for Taekwondo?
Well, if you've ever seen Rogan kick, he has a Taekwondo background, right? And that guy can put a bag through the wall. I was very impressed. I believe that Taekwondo has some great kicks, but it also has some deception, if you will, right? Because I've seen it devolve, if you will, also to one on every corner, get your black belt in 60, 90 days. I don't know, maybe that's a little exaggerated, but, you know, a couple of years.
Yeah.
I've been to, you know, several parties growing up, you know, like kids' parties and such, and, you know, we get to talking and they go, what do you like to do, Ed? Well, you know, I'm hobby heavy and I do a little martial arts. They go, well, my son Johnny, he's 10 years old and he's a second degree black belt. And this is what I'm thinking in my head. I'm thinking, I'll fight Johnny right now, man. I got no problem with it, right? Because I think it's a disservice to give someone a black belt at that age. Because the minute you take that hit or that kick or that weapon, you're going to know whether it was a farce or if you really are a black belt, right? I think, like Sifu Bruce said, belts hold up your pants, right? So you want to learn throughout life what works for you. You want to build your confidence. And I'm going to talk about this, okay? Faith in your walk is this. It's consistency. That's faith. It's you're constantly developing your growth in the Lord. That's faith. Same in your martial arts. You're constantly developing your ability to defend yourself, defend others. Right. It's a life progression, just like the Christian walk is. Right. It never stops. It should never stop. So Taekwondo has some. If you know what you're looking for, and I would say, self-examination is very difficult, but very important, especially to men. You have to go, okay, you know what? I really suck at a round, high sweeping round kick, but I'm pretty good at side kick, pretty good at front kick. That's what I'm going to keep from this. And going back to your question, yeah, it to me, it has devolved, if there's such a word, maybe just coining this phrase right now. But I noticed that in Taekwondo, a lot of people that get their black belts end there. That's it. No, and like I know, that's just the beginning, right? You've set your base.
Right.
Now you're going to develop from there.
Yeah.
So and unfortunately, I think it's doing a disservice to a lot of students.
So when I think of martial arts, and I feel like you would expand on this a lot more because I've never trained with weapons other than a gun. Like that's all,
It's a good weapon. Yeah.
But for you, there's like stick fighting and there's knife fighting. So for me, in my mind, you were talking about it a little bit before. There's like the stand up and then there's the ground game.
Right.
In my mind, I've always viewed it as in like you have striking and that would be like Muay Thai and boxing and probably some of the things that you've talked about. Then I also think there's takedowns and that's where wrestling is in, and that's where judo, aikido.
Right.
And then after that, there's, the ground game and that's jujitsu and other holds and grappling and anything. Would you add any more if we were to just kind of categorize the different martial arts? Is there anything you'd add to those three?
Sure, absolutely. First one would be awareness, right? The most simplest of all martial arts. Just know your surroundings. Keep your head on a swivel, right? Because that's the one that's going to save you, right? We live in this society, right? That 45-degree angle, punching buttons.
Yeah.
I'm pretty hard on people that walk into the crosswalk with their head down on their phone, not even thinking about what's going on and putting their lives in someone else's hands. I refuse to do that, right? So
we have striking,
yes,
takedowns,
right.
We have ground game,
yes.
and then we have
awareness. Yeah, going back to that.
Would you put weapons then in with striking?
I'd put it in a very high category because that's how I'd rather fight you, with a weapon, right? I feel confident enough that I could take multiple attackers on with my big banana pin, right? As opposed to my empty hands, right?
Really?
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt.
You'd rather fight with a pen?
If I had nothing else, if it was multiple attackers and it was just me, right, and the only thing I had was my big pen, I would take that out and I would know how to use it, and I would be more effective than I would empty hand.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel just in understanding concepts and my lack of mobility right now because my knee hurts, right? So then you go to what works for you, right? That's the Kundo concept. You go to wherever what will work for you at that time.
So help me to understand your philosophy when it comes to fighting, because I remember I had a Sifu and the guy was, oh my goodness, it was ferocious, and the way I saw him like fight, like he taught me different chokes and everything to make it more painful. Like there was this one, the guillotine, he had it to where it was over here, but then he like positioned it to where instead of just choking him with like the edge of your forearm, he had it to where you used your fist and you like crushed his jaw as you were lifting it. And so before I used to use the guillotine, but then as I felt it, like I felt scared, I was just like, oh my goodness, this is like crushing,
Right.
And his whole mentality is like, he is the nicest guy. But when he fought, there was a ferocity, and it made me really admire him. And he said something that I just, that hit me. And he says that when you are strong, you have a greater capacity for kindness. And the idea is that if you walk into a room and you're the strongest, you can then use that strength to show love. You can use that strength to like not feel like, oh no, is something going to happen? It's just like, no, I can be kind to you. I don't have to worry about you mistreating me. I can be as kind to you as I want to, and it won't threaten myself at all.
Right.
And so I really liked that because and he always taught, he's like, I won't teach you to be invincible, but I can teach you to be formidable. And there's just, I've learned that as I studied different martial arts, there's always it's more than the move. And for him, he's like, you do everything in your power to try to de-escalate the situation. He's like, never start. Even if they push you, even if they punch you, don't fight. Do everything you can. Because a lot of people say as soon as they swing the first punch, like, then you can unleash.
Right.
But then I remember learning from him, and he was like, well, you don't know if they have friends. You don't know if they have a weapon. You don't know what's going to happen.
No,
do everything you can to de-escalate it. So, and he said, as they keep on trying to egg you, if you start getting in a spot where your life is legitimately threatened, then he says you need to dismantle them. You take out all the stops, and you make sure you do everything you can to like break as many bones, make sure that they never get up until police and everything come.
Right.
But he only says, but that is last resort. You never do first off, avoid situations that would bring you to that place. And if it did get to that place, try to talk them through, try to talk them down. But as soon as they pass a threshold where your life is in danger, where their life is in danger, make sure that they never get up again. And so what are your thoughts in terms of martial arts, in terms of self-defense?
Yeah. Well, I agree with your Sifu, because anyone that knows how to fight knows how violent it can become, especially if you're trained, right? There's many Monday morning quarterbacks. There's also many Monday morning UFC champions, right? And so anyone that's been in a fight knows how ugly that can be, right? You being the one that gets beat, or you beating someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to walk away from that or not walk away from that. So the last thing you want to do as a trained fighter is fight, right? You want to de-escalate, like you said. But the concept is, in any martial art that is combative, will say there's only two switches, right? When that threshold has been passed, it's on or it's off. There is nothing in the middle.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the middle. There can't be, right? And then this threat needs to be put down until that threat is no longer a threat.
Yes.
Then you move on, right? So I totally agree with that. I can't emphasize enough how a true fighter, that's the last thing he wants to do, is fight.
Martial arts is violent.
Yep.
Like, I was doing this Krav Maga training, and we were learning this move called picking berries. And let's just say berries is as an analogy.
Yeah, don't do a whole lot of imagination for that one, right?
And and I was like, oh, that's a good move.
Yeah.
you know,
it's a very good move.
Because you kind of like what you were saying, if you can fight with a Bic pen right now against a bunch of guys, and you're gonna puncture a lot of holes in the people, you know,
it'll take a long time.
And with Krav Maga, it's the same mentality that you have is survival. Doing everything you can to go home if anything were to happen. And so how do you reconcile your Christianity and your faith and your walk with God? Because God is a loving God. God is full of mercy and grace, and he wants people to be saved. Now, how do you reconcile that with these violent kicks and chokes and holds, and how do you hold the two together?
I can't, so I'm going home now. I have no problem with it whatsoever, because he is called the Lord of Hosts. That's a military term. That means he's the commander of a brigade, a battalion of warriors, right? That's not a passive term. When Abraham went to go rescue Lot, he took 300 trained men, it said. It didn't say they stopped and trained and, you went to white belt to black belt, then they went after them. No, he said they were trained.
Yeah.
And then he took them, right? Jesus said, hey, you know what? You sell your cloak, take a dagger, right? So I have no problem with being violent at the right time when it is needed, right? Because it's in the scriptures, right? But I like the samurai warrior because when he wasn't fighting, he was a painter, he was a gardener, he was a poet, he made tea, and that's where the term gentleman came from, was from the samurai warrior, because they didn't want to do that. They wanted to address this other part of their life. So, but going back to the scriptures, there's so many, David, 13, 14, right? He didn't start training when he saw that giant. He had killed the lion and the bear way before that.
Right.
Right. And so he was prepared, and he didn't have any qualms about it. And let me say this, you know what? Righteous men have to stand up against evil. That's a no-brainer. That's what has to happen in a Christian man's life, right? He sees unrighteousness in one way or another, he has to stand against it.
I feel like there is almost a feminization of men these days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of guys that, you know, will dress really nice, play video games. Mm-hmm. And I would say that back when I taught at a private Christian school, mm-hmm. a lot of people didn't know how to fight. Do you think every Christian should know how to fight?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I don't have to think twice about it, right? Because you know what? It's going to instill a goal in you, a confidence, a direction, and self-control, right? Because the Bible tells us clearly, he said, I have not given you the spirit of fear, but one of love, one of joy, and one of self-control, mm-hmm. right? So I believe that's part of the whole martial art concept, is learning self-control. It ties in with the Word of God. Yeah.
So how did you become a Christian? We're talking a lot about, you know, you're just naturally kind of putting it in, but how did you start walking with God?
Yeah, I remember specifically Dave Tomasini coming to me in high school and sharing the gospel with me. At that time, I didn't know what the gospel was, but I was on my way to a softball game, and so he pulled me over and we got to talk, and he talked about Christ, and he had a conversion. And so I thought, that sounds pretty good, sounds pretty cool. On my way to a baseball game, and then after the game, we start partying, smoking dope and snorting coke, right? Mm-hmm. But I knew something was like, hey, this is kind of interesting. And then I had certain situations like that happen throughout the rest of my senior year. And then one day, me and my buddy were getting high at his apartment, and the Billy Graham Crusade came on. And they go, he's going to be on this afternoon in San Jose State at 3:00. My partner, who's like a drug dealer, he looks at me and goes, hey, you want to go? I go, yeah, sounds kind of cool. Let's go.
Yeah.
Gave my life to Christ that day. I didn't know what had happened, but I knew something had happened, right? Because the next day, I went to work, and this guy I worked with, he came up to me and he goes, hey, man, you want to smoke a joint? And I go, I don't think I can, because I'm a Christian now. I think I'm a Christian. And he goes, that's cool. I'm a Christian too. I go, well, I guess. I mean, if he's cool with it. So fired up a joint, took the first hit, and I thought, I'm done. It's like, that's not me anymore. That's the past. At that point, I knew that I was a Christian, and that's kind of how it started. After that,
what drew you? Like, is there anything that you kind of remember that God spoke to you?
Yeah. Easy. Pastor Billy Graham goes, hey, if you die, I'm going to summarize it real quick. If you die, where are you going? Because you're all going to die. You know, the Word of God makes it clear. There is a heaven and a hell, right? God wants you to be part of his family. He wants to take you to heaven. But there's more to it than that. There between my life now and the time I get to eternity, there is a process of learning, but even more so, there's an understanding of life, right? It's not money and fame and fortune or drugs or not having a job or being irresponsible. It's understanding that this is a testing ground, if you will, how are you going to deal with it? Are you going to put your trust and your faith in this one that you have never met and never seen, right? But there's a lot about him that changes people's lives. Or are you going to disguise and cover up and take the easy way out by sex, drugs, rock and roll, take your pick, right? So that's kind of my feeling thinking on that.
So it sounds like you became a Christian around like 18, 20?
I think it was 1983.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you training in martial arts around that time too?
I don't think so. I don't think I was quite yet there. I started in 88. I had, ordered the catalogs and, did try to learn from the catalog, right? And after, in 7th and 8th grade, Bruce Lee was hot in the 70s. And I got to tell you this story. This one guy that I taught Sunday school with, his name was Craig Borland. And hi, Craig, if you're listening. But so Craig was at the local high school, and Dan Inosanto, who's Bruce Lee's training partner, was Craig's PE teacher.
Oh.
Yeah. So one day, Coach Inosanto brings Bruce Lee for career day. I go, you met Bruce Lee? He goes, yeah. He goes, I got to shake your hand, bro. It's like, you touched the legend. So anyways, I'm sorry, I forgot your question about.
So you met Bruce Lee's partner, and
I have trained a little bit with Sifu Bruce's Dan Inosanto, some seminars and stuff, and so very nice guy, very very low key, talk about knowing the martial arts. Oh my gosh, yeah.
What made Bruce Lee a good fighter?
1 in a million, 1 in 10 million. Yeah. Just the ability, the physical ability, the mental ability, the articulation, the philosophy. He was a heathen, right? But I think going back to self-examination as a man, as a fighter, as a father, as a whatever, right? But he had that ability that goes beyond the normal everyday martial artist. You know how we see the phenoms and whatever? He was a phenom in the martial arts.
So there's a movie that I like. Have you watched Braveheart?
Yes, I have. Yeah. I was catching it the other night, as a matter of fact.
Really?
A few people saw it. It's 11 o'clock. I'll go to 11:30, man. Yeah.
So I remember when I was in Bible college, and I remember I was just going through a really tough time. And I think I just got done with a final, and my granddad in the faith, he's my mentor. He was my teacher at the time. And so we talked all the time. And I remember him telling me, like, at the end of the semester, he was like, Miles, your heart is free. Have the courage to walk in it. And I was like, wow, that's so deep. That's so profound. And then I watched Braveheart, and it was exactly the exact quote in Braveheart. And so I'm like, he stole it from the movie. So I have a point. But one of the things that I love in that movie is the boy, after his family died, he wanted to like get vengeance but his mentor or his teacher said, before I teach you how to fight, I'm going to teach you how to use this instead. Yeah. And so it's all about the mentality. Yes. It's all about the mind.
Yes.
So as an instructor, how long have you instructed martial arts?
I don't know, you go off and on. I couldn't tell you. It's been years. You do it for a while, and you go take classes, and you do it for a while. And so, it just pops in.
Just always learning.
Always learning. Yeah, always learning. And when you teach, you learn.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what mentalities, what philosophies, what mindsets do you want to instill into your students?
The first thing that comes to mind is it's either on or off, right? That in that violent situation, you have to open up that can. But even more than that is don't get in that situation in the first place. Don't look around. Keep your head on a swivel, right? Like I'll teach quick seminars and I'll say I'm not going to make you a black belt in 3 hours.
Right.
It's never going to happen. But I'm going to give you some tools. that are going to give you a fighting chance, right? I believe it was Coach Hickson Gracie that said, jiu-jitsu may not help you conquer it all in a fight, but it'll give you a fighting chance. Right, and I believe that, and that's probably what I want to do is when I coach someone or teach someone is give them a fighting chance, give them a little bit of confidence. I really like and take a lot of pleasure in when we do a women's self-defense class and they walk away with confidence, right? Because I say this to women: if you know nothing, that's exactly what you're going to do. Right. Same with men. If you know nothing, that's exactly what you're going to do. That whole philosophy of, you're not going to step up into what you think you can do. You're going to fall back into what you've trained to do. Right. And again, if you know nothing, you're going to do nothing. Right. And then also, you have to give yourself permission right here, right as we're sitting here. We need to give each other permission within ourselves to hurt someone if they're going to hurt us. Because if you're trying to figure that out in the middle of a fight, it's too late.
What do you mean? What do you mean by giving people permission?
So I always thought, well, can I shoot someone if they go into my house, if they're a threat to me? And I pondered that for a while. And then I came to the realization that, okay, that desk right there, that's the line. That's the line. You can take whatever you want on that side of the line. Once you cross that line, then I'm committed to doing what I need to do to defend myself or my family, right? And that's the line, and that's it. I know at that point that it will become violent.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have to determine that prior to whatever situation you're going to fall into, or heaven forbid you fall into anything like that, because it's just ugly.
Right. So you teach your students to be able to turn it on and off.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give your students tools to
use. And I think that's the key right there is tools, because awareness is just as valuable as knowing how to slash and thrust, to pull a trigger, right? Just as valuable.
Mm-hmm. What if, because I know a lot of young people that struggle with just pride.
Mm-hmm.
They know something.
Mm-hmm.
They can do a choke. They can do a punch. They can, do all these different flashy moves.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever struggled with teaching people who were prideful? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I had one gentleman that trained with me for a while, and we were drilling, and he goes, "Oh man, you couldn't even touch me." I said, "Okay, let's do it again." And so I just faked a jab and hit him in the solar plexus and dropped him like a bag of rocks, right? Because I knew what to do and when to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes, and even for me, right? Sometimes you have to take the bullet to learn, right?
So you give the bullet.
Sometimes you give the bullet, sometimes you take the bullet. What is it? Sometimes you bite the bear, sometimes the bear bites you, right? And that's how you learn. That's how you learn. And usually you sort of pre-qualify those people, right? Mm-hmm. So if you know that you're dealing with someone that really isn't looking at the whole understanding of fighting, but wants to be macho, mm-hmm. then our conversation, our relationship is going to be very shallow, very limited, and very short in time.
Yeah.
So bottom line is I don't want to teach anyone like that.
Yeah. I think all the people who I've ever met that were like actually really good at martial arts, mm-hmm. they're always just so nice. Mm-hmm. They're always smiling,
I met some nice people,
and you wouldn't even, you couldn't even tell that they were fighters. Mm-hmm. Like, so Abigail and I just got hired to be fitness instructors, mm-hmm. and the guy who heads up the gym, his name is Samuel-san, and he is a Muay Thai fighter. Mm-hmm. And so he does Muay Thai and he trained Muay Thai and everything. Mm-hmm. And so we'd have Muay Thai ministry at the church, and it'd be in this main sanctuary, and mm-hmm. we'd move all the chairs and everything, and we'd put all the mats. And it's so cool in Japan because as I'm like training in Muay Thai, all these little kids are like running around and playing tag and everything. And I'm just up there with Samuel-san, and he's like kicking my leg and everything. And I'm like, next day I'm like limping, it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I remember Samyeru-san was like showing us like he was just training us and he was showing us like, okay, this is how you kick. And so he was kicking him. And then the guy who was like holding it was like struggling with the strength. And he's like, Samyeru-san's like, oh, you know, he's talking in Japanese and everything. And he's like, oh, so you kick like this, like, pa. And then he's like, okay, everyone makes sense. And he's like, I think I could go a little bit harder. And so he goes like, pa. And then the guy like topples. So I love that there's, I don't know. I like how you just dropped to the guy. I think because you're just so kind and you're so, I can't imagine you doing that. But like, same thing with my dad. Like, he'll tell me stories and everyone's like, I can't imagine your dad being mean. And I'm like, you don't know my dad.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I know your dad. And I'm like, yeah, great guy. Don't want to be on his bad side.
No, you never want to be on his bad side. No. And so for you training as long as you have, I know that you said you have a switch. It's on or it's off.
Yes.
The entire time I've ever known you, it's been off.
Well, let me be honest with you. Sometimes in running my business, I've had situations where I really had to check myself because I went from this to like, what do you mean, right? And I have to check myself, not only as a martial artist but as a Christian man, right? Where's that self-control, right? Yeah. Be quick to listen, slow to speak. Even though I think I'm right, just to hear someone else out. Yeah.
Has there ever been a time in which you switched the switch on?
There's been one that I can truly say I really thought I was going to have to take someone's life. And that was an ugly situation. That was scary. And if you want, I'll share that with you. But and I only share it because of how ugly it sort of became. But we were at a mall around Christmas time or New Year's, and we're last minute shopping, and it was pretty vacant and desolate. And so my wife and I went in, and so we separated to do some shopping. And I always keep my head on a swivel. I'm watching her as I'm doing my thing, and she moves, and I see 3 or 4 guys move with her. And then she moves again, and then I see them move again. And then I thought, okay, well, I got to figure this out, see if this is what I think it is. So then
how far away are you from this?
I'm probably maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 car lengths, if you will.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. And then you were in a department store?
In the department store.
Okay,
exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I go up to her and I said, hey, honey, let's, I just want to go down the store. I don't want to alarm her. So I'll go, okay, honey, let's just go to the next store here. And then, so we walk out and we walk around a couple of turns, and then I need to know if this is really happening. So we walk into the store, and as you walk in, right, she walks in, and I go immediately to my right, and I'm standing behind the wall, but I can see the door. I can see anybody coming in, and I can hear what's going on. And then so then I see them in the reflection of the store mirror, and then I hear, there she is. And at that point, I thought, oh, crap, right? Because I knew this was real.
Right.
And so I remember just about 2 weeks ago training with this guy.
2 weeks ago today, or 2 weeks
2
ago?
weeks ago. 2 weeks ago from that incident.
Okay.
2 weeks prior to the incident. I was training with this guy, older martial artist, and he said, Ed, if you ever have to do someone, you look them in the eye and you do it. So then I saw them walk in. They walked in, and they were headed towards her. So I went around, and I got hold of her, and I said, honey, we're leaving. I don't think this is a good situation. And then these guys stood right in front of us. And I looked at the one guy, and I knew this guy was kind of the leader, if you will. And I looked at him, and with intent in my eyes, I said to him, I didn't have to speak any words. I said, today you will die. And I don't care. because this is my family. So, yeah, it's funny because when I stared at him, he looked at me, the seas parted. They just went like this. Because he knew that I meant it. So, it's still hard to talk about because it's an ugly part of life that I didn't want to do, but I was willing to do it.
What happened from there after
They just left.
gone?
We just walked out peacefully and no issues after that. It was like, yeah, it was. And just to repeat it, I meant it. I thought about, I know how to kill you, and it's going to happen fast, and your friends are going to think about it before the next one steps in, right? And if I go to prison, I don't care. I don't, because you're a threat to me and my family. So, and that's probably the closest I've ever been to something like that. It's ugly.
I'm very thankful that there are men like you. It kind of reminds me of my dad. I don't know why I was thinking about this the other day. But I remember I was little. I was like 8 or 7 or something. And I was just talking to Dad like, hey, like, Dad, what would you do if there was like a shooting, you know? And I remember he kind of like embraced me to where like my entire body was covered and like I couldn't really move. And he's like, this is probably what I'd do. And there was a sense of safety that was behind it. Like I had confidence knowing that like my dad will protect me and he'll do whatever's necessary to make it happen. And I think martial arts gives people the ability to get in the way of bad people from doing bad things. How did your wife respond to everything that happened?
A sigh of relief, sense of protection, sense of confidence, sense of gratitude. Not to me, but just that the Lord took care of us, right? I remember right as I looked at that guy, I thought, "Oh Lord, don't let it be." And when we're done,
prayed that prayer,
exactly.
Before or after you told him you were
and after, I said, "Oh Lord, thank you so much," because I was committed. I was committed 100% to the action I was going to take. Yeah.
In both life-threatening situations. So I just got done with another interview where a guy, he was being held at gunpoint.
Oh man.
And as he was being held at gunpoint, he was witnessing to the guy. He's like, you don't want to do this, you know, and he started talking to him about the gospel.
Yeah.
And then as he was doing this, he was praying. And I love that you were also in a life-threatening situation. It was 3v1. You have no idea what's going to happen, but you're going to go all out to protect your wife.
Yeah.
But I love that you talked about instincts. You go back to what you were trained to do, and your training prayed.
Yeah. Well, I know where my bread is buttered, right? All my strength comes from the Lord. Everything, be able to do this, right? That's miraculous. I love what the Bible says in the Psalms. It says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, for He has done great things." If you think about that, every vessel, every vein, every blood cell, every muscle, every bone, every tendon, let everything that is within me bless the Lord, for He has done great things. That's an awesome verse when you stop and think about it, because everything within you He's created, right? So everything will bless Him. Yeah.
I know this might be an interesting question, but I love that your instinct is just to, even in that moment, before and after, you were thanking God, asking God for help, and he was just all around that
Yeah.
entire situation. How did God become such a natural response to you? How did that
It is continuous, like training in the martial arts. It's continuous. It's perpetual. It never stops, right? I never stopped talking to God throughout the day, right? A new thing I'm picking up is when I'm tempted, I will just say, Jesus, man, Jesus, right? Speaking that name and calling upon him has tremendous power, has tremendous ability and capability to overcome what you're about to step into, right? And you have committed to that name now. Now, think about that. If you call on that name out loud and you commit to it, you're less likely to step into that sin because you know that you're taking the Spirit into that, right? You know that, hey, man, the Lord's right here with me. Do I really want to do that? Many times the Lord has said to me, I'll bless you if you don't do that. I'll bless you right now if you don't follow. If you follow me, I'll bless you. And a lot of times I'll go like, all right, let's find out. Let's find out, Lord. Okay, you said it. I'm going to follow you, right? And I've seen it. I've seen it many times. Yeah, so
you are saying just Jesus.
Speaking of that, not just saying it, but asking him to come, right? Asking him to be real at this very second, right? Because I want Jesus to be real, not just on Sunday mornings at, between 8:30 and 9:30 when I'm in church. I want to know where he's at when I'm in road rage or when I'm at McDonald's or when I'm praising or when I'm down, when I'm depressed, when I'm excited. I want to know where he is at all times, right? Because then he becomes real to me.
I think, so I have a question and it's kind of followed up with a story, or maybe a story first, then the question.
Okay.
There was another time when I kind of had to, not similar situation as you, where there was a threat. I was on my way home from a summer camp that I was helping teach at. And so we were driving and I was in charge of like 1, 2, 3, about 4 or 5 kids. And so I was driving back and like, all right, guys, let's go. And so we stopped at In-N-Out. And I was just, just aware of my surroundings. Dad always trained me to be aware of my exit points, where everybody is. Yeah. And the danger zone is always the bathroom because there's always only one way in for most bathrooms and one way out.
Yep.
And so I knew one of my girls was inside the bathroom. And so I was just waiting. And from the parking lot, I see an anomaly, a guy that just said bad news all over the place. Wearing a big trench coat, black, holding a duffel bag. And it was just always looking left and right like this. And I just see him and I'm like, what is this? And so as soon as he started like coming in from the parking lot, I got everybody's food and I said, hey guys, let's meet in the car. I'm going to go ahead and start throwing everything away. And so I just pretend like I'm like going there, and so by the time he gets through the front door, I'm at the front door and I'm just pretending to throw things away. I wanted to leave immediately, but I knew that Alexis was in the bathroom. And so as this guy's just waiting in line, I start waiting in line. And this guy, the entire time, is just holding this big, huge duffel bag in his coat. And he just is always looking left and is always looking right. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, do I have to do anything? Do I have to do anything? Alexis, just come out. As soon as she comes out, I'm like, hey, we're in the car already. Go ahead and go in the car. And I start backing up and didn't look like he was going to do anything, And I kind of just was able to, I'm like, okay, he looks like he's just weird. Looks like he's just crazy. And then I got everybody and then we left. And I remember just feeling so grateful. Like, thank you,
amen.
God. Thank you, God, that
Amen.
nothing
Yes,
happened.
yes.
Thank you, God, that I didn't have to
can,
do anything.
Man, I can relate to that.
You know?
Sigh of relief, like, oh, man.
Yes.
Oh, thank you,
It could have been bad,
Yeah.
but it wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad.
You know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just think that it's so important for people to be aware of their surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess going back to my question, you are someone that is willing to get in harm's way in order to protect the people that you love,
Mm-hmm.
in order to protect the people that you care about. I bet a lot of people who are watching this right now are probably going to say, like, I don't know anything. I don't know how to, if anything did happen, I'd probably panic or freak out, you know, or maybe I throw a right and that's it, you know. For people who want to learn more about martial arts, who want to learn more about self-defense, where would you have them start?
I'd have them start right within themselves, right? Get an understanding of your weak and strong points, right? I say to a lot of my students, I said, become physically fit, become muscular, because you're less of a threat. I beg your pardon. You stand less of a chance of being a victim, right? Because if I was, and I always put myself in the position of a bad guy. If you look like you're physically fit and you can handle yourself, I'm going to go over to that weak guy. I don't want to mess with you, right? I don't. So look at yourself and see. A 30-second fight is an eternity.
Yeah.
If you've ever been in a fight, man, and it's all out. It's not. We're not sparring. We're in combat, right? The situation I think I told you was I was in a fight before training, and man, I'm just going like, when are the cops getting here? Because I'm getting the crap beat out of me. I'm just hanging on for life, right? So you have to look at yourself and go,
Wait,
what's
has that happened?
Pardon me?
Has that happened?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Before I trained, I got jumped by 4 or 5 guys. Yeah. And no training. I'm just covering and throwing swings and trying to wrestle and, horrible fight. Right. And I'm just thinking, man, gosh, I'm sure someone called the cops by now because it's pretty obvious what's happening here. And so, but you have to look at yourself. And interesting enough, they say that I just heard this stat just a couple of days ago. 7 out of 10 people take martial arts because something has happened in their lives.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
That is
interesting.
An eye-opening quote.
Yeah. And that's
statistic.
why I took martial arts, right? It's because that situation happened to me. And I thought, man, I'm defenseless. I don't know what the heck to do, right?
Yeah.
But if I teach you how to take this and stick it in that, and that's all you know, then that's what you're going to use. That's what you want. You have something. You have a tool. So take the first step. Just do whatever it takes to take that first step, whether it's taekwondo, jukun, jiu-jitsu, I was going to say firearms, but you have to be, I think it takes a certain mentality to take firearms. You have to understand that a firearm is different than the lethality of it is different, right?
Yes.
So train really hard in that. Get someone that really knows what they're doing, right? So I would just start. Just examine yourself and go, what do I want from this? Yeah,
I'm really glad that you brought exercise into it.
Yeah,
it's
essential.
I just think that it's just helpful in general when you're healthy. It helps me think. There's always a fog that I kind of have to wrestle with, like a brain fog, just feeling kind of like lousy. Because a lot of times when I'm working, I'm in front of a computer, I'm writing, I'm trying to be creative, thinking about what to do for our other YouTube channel, and I'm just feeling like, and whenever I exercise, it just like I can breathe, and it also helps with self-control. You do have more control over your thoughts, over your body, and you overall just feel better. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So I had a lot of students who would ask me, because I always like bringing martial arts into Bible studies, just because I feel like it's very, I'm able to get boys' attention,
Oh yeah.
Like there's this
So,
one
it's a
passage.
good-
There's this one passage, the parable of the sower, and how the thorns. It said it choked the word.
Right.
And so I'm like, I need a volunteer, And so I'm like, let me show you how chokes work. Like, and the guy was standing in front of me, and I'm like, I can't choke him from all the way over here.
Yeah.
So if I take one step closer, all right, well, I'm harmless. I'm just over here, and I take another step closer, and then I'm behind him, and I'm like, I'm still not choking him. It's okay. Put my arm here. We're hanging out. It's okay,
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, okay, that's still going,
Starts
hanging
creeping
out,
up there. Yeah.
And then I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go really fast. Okay, let me just show you how it feels. And it's like, just kind of like little like kind of a thing. And I'm
That's
like,
real. Yeah.
and he's like, and I tell everybody, I'm like, and that's what Satan does sometimes. It's just this.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks harmless. Doesn't mind if I do this or if I allow this thing to happen in my life. It's okay.
Yeah.
But then it's too late by the time it reaches a certain point.
Yes.
And so I say all of this because all of those boys are like, oh my goodness, martial arts. I got to learn martial arts. And so they're like, where should I start? And so I only have my limited knowledge, and so I said I want to see how your advice would differ from mine. But I said that I would either recommend starting with jiu-jitsu or to start with either boxing or Muay Thai. And the reason why is because they're very practical.
Absolutely.
It gives you a very, very solid base. And it reminds me of what you said. You take the meat and you spit out the bones. And when it comes to martial arts, I find that there's a lot of overlap. It's like, it's kind of the same sequence. It's like you take one step. First you have your stance, and then you have step 1, 2, 3, and then you have the execution way down the line.
Right.
And then after you have the execution, then they're like, okay, well, here's the counter move, and then they're like, okay, here's the stance, here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the execution. And so all martial arts are punches. It kind of has that format. And so I would encourage them, do the one that interests you more. Once you do that for about a year or two, then move on to the next one so that you can have ground game and striking. That way, whether you're on the ground, whether you're striking, so you kind of have like a 2-year training plan. Be committed, do it, and then just kind of learn from there. So for you, let's say there's a young guy, girl, and they're like, I don't know anything. I want to know. I'm already fit. I'm in sports, or I'm, I'm good, but I'm a blank slate. What would you recommend for them to do?
I think jiu-jitsu is a great place to start. It's a real chess game, right? Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Stand-up could be pretty much, unless you're a trained fighter, just a thumb fest, right? Right. But jiu-jitsu is such an organized combat, and it's cerebral, right? It's a chess match. It really is. And sometimes you make the right move, and sometimes you don't. So that's a good place. But I like your philosophy, right? Attach yourself to something, and then attach another piece to it, and then another piece to it, and another piece to get to where you want to be. And maybe jiu-jitsu will be the only place you want to be attached, and that's fine. That's not a problem at all. It just depends on self-examination. What do you want from it? When I stepped out of that car and I looked at that garage, I thought it's a garage. But when I heard those guys just pounding those pads, I thought, man, this is what I want to add to my Taekwondo straight kick, side kick, and spinning kick, because I like those and I know I can work well with those. Now I want to add this to it. And this had a different mentality. It wasn't a sport. It was a combat. And so therefore I attached that to my base, and then I went and attached this to it, and this to it, and this to it, and I'm still attaching. And I will attach until I can attach no more, right? Someone asked me one time, you still in jiu-jitsu? When are you going to quit? I thought, what a question. What a question. And I said to him, I'm going, and I put this on I said it, and one of my teachers took the quote and put it on a shirt for me. And it says, I will train as long as God gives me life and the ability to train, right? When I can no longer to train, right? When I don't have that ability anymore, then I just won't do it anymore. But till then, just keep going no matter what.